meeting, this is May the 20th, call of order.
Henry Champion,
Present.
Bill Powell,
Here.
Matty Koval,
I haven't heard from Commissioner Cole, so she'll be here a little bit later.
Judy Runge, Ray Cruz,
I talked to Commissioner Cruz earlier. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it. He was asking if he could be on the place.
Dave Richard,
Here.
Scott Forrest,
Here.
Okay. This way.
Were there any questions on the minutes from the previous meeting? Excuse me, one moment. Sorry. There's a baby outside. I can't say they're very, very nice when the shows up, so I can't really be too mad. If there are no questions, yeah, exactly, yes, little piece shows up, you know. I'm sorry, so there were no other questions about the minutes? Okay. Financial reports. The Housing Authority for the month of April, as you all know, April is the first month of our new fiscal year. So I will admit some of the numbers will look a little confusing, partly because we're doing our year-end close, so we didn't spend as much time working on the first month's financials as we normally would. The auditor or the accountant were putting in the unaudited financials, which is doing about a week. So because of that, as you look at the financials, all the information's there. It's not categorized the way we normally categorize. We will make the adjustments, and those will be shown in the next month's report in the categories that belong. Overall, the numbers are correct. For the agency-wide, the agency had a very, very slim net profit of $8,000, which is essentially a break-even month for us. Basically, what we had was $953,000 of revenue and $944,000 of expenses for the month. We are still seeing continued cutbacks from HUD as far as the Section 8 program, which is the primary driver of being such a slim amount. The Section 8 program had a $65,000 net loss. April was the first month that they initiated additional cuts, and we talked about those cuts earlier in the year, so they're just continuing along their path. I did have an interesting conversation with HUD related to the Section 8 program and the funding. They are anticipating that the Housing Authority will have to use all of their reserves related to the Section 8 program. That's the direction that they've been given from DC. If a housing authority such as ours, where we have significant reserves, if at the end of the year we haven't utilized all of those reserves, HUD has actually made it pretty clear that they're going to take the money back anyway. So whether we use them or we don't, HUD's going to take the reserves away from us. They're basically going to a new approach where housing authorities don't maintain the reserves, HUD does. So that if they see a housing authority short money, they can reallocate the money. Personally, right, yeah, that's, you know, when I had the conversation with them, I kind of asked how do you expect us to manage a program of this size with no reserves to speak of, and they didn't have a very good answer. So, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm outrageously surprised. It's a little hard to imagine how they expect us to manage the program this way, but I think as we get further down the road, a little more common sense will come into the reserve situation. I do expect them to take a significant amount of the reserves back, but they reasonably have to leave us with at least a month or two worth of reserves. If they don't, there are other ways that we can try to reallocate some funds so that we have some reserves sitting around for that program. Those are some of the kind of alternative actions we'll need to take if that becomes kind of a clear picture. Because I really don't know, and they haven't put out any literature on how they expect the program in and of itself to be managed without any reserves.
Well, if we get to that point where you're absolutely sure that they're going to take it back, we need to spend it.
Absolutely, I agree. The problem with the money they want to take back is it's Section 8 reserves. So what we would end up doing is forcing ourselves to use stuff in the program, which is fine, really. It's just a little difficult to do sometimes. It doesn't happen as quickly as you might want. Sometimes you can give somebody a voucher today. On average, I think it takes 30 days for them to get these stuff. So, but in anticipation of that, as more information comes out, of course, we'll kind of make some adjustments operationally to address it. As far as the public housing program goes, we had $271,000 in revenue and $211,000 in expense. So there's a $60,000 net profit in that program. Now, I'm going to admit a mistake. If you noticed in there, there's a $65,000 net loss in one program, a $60,000 net profit in the other. Yet agency-wide, we're reporting an $8,000 overall profit. That obviously can't happen. The money we received, we actually just failed to report on the public housing program financials of about $16,000 in money from the Ross program. We actually went down to HUD, we had to draw down our money. So that's shown in the agency-wide, is not shown in the public housing individual program financials. It's the other income that you see on the first page, it's not in the other two pages. We'll get that corrected before the next board meeting, get out and get the financials covered. But the $8,000 net profit is a net profit. Are there any questions?
What's our reserve balance? You mentioned we're going to pull up our reserve balance this year.
The Section 8 program at this point has around $500,000. Overall, the agency has $1.2 million in reserves. And those are split between the two programs. Public housing has a significant amount due to the fact that we've had a lot of profits over the past year or so. But the Section 8 program is about $500,000.
Okay. And then you said 1 month, and it was basically 65,173 was the loss. Do you think that will be like the kind of the trend line with the new fundings?
I believe that the new funding will stabilize slightly higher. Our numbers for May and June were more than we got in April. April was where they kind of pushed any of those remaining cutbacks that they had to make prior to the sequester. They pushed all those out at one time as opposed to doing it over several months like they normally was. I do expect the funding to be at around $600,000 to $620,000 a month. We will manage the program like we have been previously, trying to get closer to that number so that we're not constantly overextending ourselves each month. HUD gives us the final word that yes, they expect us to use the reserves and fine, we'll spend them and we'll ramp back up a little bit. But if they're being kind of up in the air on how they expect us to handle the reserves, we will act as if we need to keep our reserves and continue to lease down to our revenues. Are there any other questions? Are there any questions on the list of bills?
One was on charges for cleaning the dryers. How many dryers do you have?
Each property has a laundry room, and in general, correct me if I'm wrong, they do each property.
Over at Maple Terrace, there's 8. There's 8 floors, there's 8 laundry rooms, and I believe there's 1 or 2 dryers in each. Over here at Plum Street, we have just 1 on 1630, 1 on 1640. And I believe there's like 2 dryers in each of us.
So that would be like cleaning each of the dryers one time?
Right, the vents and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. Oh, the elevator stuff, the maintenance that you had done on them. Do we have service contracts with those or not?
Yeah, we have sort of, I don't know exactly which building it is there. Every year, Thompson Elevator does their state inspections. And some of those we actually had to upgrade because some of the, like the door sensors were outdated. They made us upgrade, so that's why. Like you said, that's why.
I'll look
There,
into the
yeah.
invoice some more and get you more details.
Okay. I was just interested because those are obviously not there all the time.
Typically, I know we do the regular inspections, but if there is any, if a resident complains that the door is broken or if the lights are out, we also go in and have a contractor go and make sure those are correct too. But I won't get more detail on that. Are there any other questions?
I have one for Jim. I don't know if it's on his bill, but it's in the report. I believe we had another garage that was damaged.
No, that was the one I reported last month. In that red room.
My question is, are we getting any kind of reimbursement from the tenant? You know, I say you reported to the insurance company, And there is a deductible? Is there?
The resident, and this, it's kind of a problem, you know, it's difficult for us to go to residents and say, you call us $5,000 with the damage, pay us back $5,000. Typically, if we had $5,000, we wouldn't live here. We do, obviously, in situations where it's been determined that it was negligent, of course, you know, we will go after them for and put them on repayment. So they may owe us for damages, you know, an extra $50 a month forever until they pay it off. We try not to put the entire burden on the residents at one time, so because it's just difficult for them to pay it back.
Here's my question. If they're driving a vehicle, the vehicle should have insurance.
Exactly. And our insurance company will handle that.
Okay, okay, that's.
Thank you.
Any other?
It wasn't in the bills, but it was, I think, in the Jericho Circle, expenses, is that what these 2 pages were?
Those are the capital expenses. We just list out everything we've done for the full year. It was a requested board earlier on that we detailed. Literally a full year expense. So it's like a trailing 12 months. Yeah, we haven't spent any money in Jericho in a while. Except for demolition.
Right, and like I said, my only thinking of this is there other expected expenses out there? I mean, you're doing landscaping and stuff like that.
Other than when we get started working on the office out there.
Do you anticipate that to happen soon?
No, Carlos and I are getting together around this time. We're doing the planning, what can we put in the building, what can we put in the building. I really don't expect us to have any real expenses for Jericho stuff for the office until the end of the summer at the earliest. Other questions? So as you know, April is the beginning of our fiscal year, so we're starting off a brand new year. We have our new budget is in place, of course, and we're starting to roll out some of the activities we discussed in the strategic plan. Of course, a lot of it now is just planning, so it's all boring stuff. We get to sit down and have a lot of meetings, but we're not really getting into the actual work. We expect to start that next month. We start talking about the new logo, the new website design and logo. As we get further on in the summer, we get further down the line to the new office and some other changes we want to make in the first year of planning. You know, we had a planning session last month. We actually missed the vote timing. We'll have that up for vote. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask those. We are preparing a Section 3 policy. It was in the package that everybody received. They've done an excellent job of crafting that policy. Basically, the purpose of that policy is to allow us to help our residents to find job opportunities. Ideally, what it would do is require that for certain types of contracts, certain types of work, that contractors hire our residents to do some of the lighter work, some work that they're qualified for. We have some people who can do plumbing, or can work on the demolition crew, can work on the construction crew. So ideally, we want to ask our contractors to hire individuals. What realistically happens more often than not is that to save them time and effort, they actually just donate to our Section 3 fund and give a certain percentage of the total contract value. They put it in our Section 3 fund. We use that money to provide more programming, more of the things that Kim does, more ROS programming, more job training programs. The purpose, of course, is to help people to gain self-sufficiency and to gain employment. So I know the policy was in the packets and with a resolution for that will be up on Wednesday. As far as the program, we had 5 families to move in, 4 to move out. We had yet another family move out to rent the private market. So we'll assume that's for good reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, and if they're tired of us, even still, there's a new family now that we can serve, and we can help somebody else is back out in the private market, being part of the community, we hope. Of course, as we're all aware, there was a pretty substantial fire at Maple Terrace. The fire actually was primarily contained to one unit of smoke and water damage. We had to evacuate the entire west wing of the building. Most of those families on the higher floors, the 3rd, 4th, and I believe the 1st one, that will all return. The only families that are not, they won't be back for in their units for a while. The families that were in the immediate vicinity on that 2nd floor. What we've done to address that, because obviously we are paying for those families to be in a hotel right now. What we've done to address that is as vacancies come up portfolio-wide, whether it be Maple Terrace or Centennial House, families in the in the hotel will come to whatever vacancies come up first. So it's an emergency situation, so we're kind of superseding our standard policy, but we want to get those families back in units as soon as possible. We also, and I know, I think you guys were discussing a little bit earlier, we are paying for meals for families at the Pop Bear restaurant, which is next door to the hotel. I will admit that it is a violation, so to speak, of company policy. I do have, you guys want to talk to me?
Yeah, because I was thinking after, I read all that stuff, that we had
We
just
did.
done a thing on that.
There is a policy, and in the policy, it explains the steps the housing authority would take in the event of displacement of residents. I actually didn't, and this is my fault, I didn't think anybody else, but I didn't get the policy, I didn't ask for the policy until after the fire happened and after we authorized the payments. There were families, the way we figured, there were families that otherwise may not have been, so we wanted to make sure that.
Well, I think we did it in the beginning, but I think as it drew on, that's when there was a day amount or something.
Right. And it becomes very, and don't get me wrong, it's roughly, when we had everybody at the hotel, it was a $500 a day expense. So it was a little bit pricey. Part of the idea was, obviously, we knew families would be coming back. Some of the families were back as soon as the next day. Most of the families were back by the following Monday. So we only have now a few families that are affected on the second floor, which I think are around 10 or 15 families. And as we get vacancies, those families will start returning. So we don't expect too many people to be out, to be displaced for much more than a couple more weeks, maybe a month. There will come a point as we get down that road where we may have to find some alternative situations. Obviously, families would normally buy groceries during this time period, so they may have to become responsible for their own meals after a certain time period. We haven't really considered how long it might be. We hope the families don't have to stay in the hotel that long. So it'll be kind of a call once we get a little further down the road. But I will say, and then I will repeat on Wednesday at the board meeting, I'm extremely pleased and proud of the staff. And I was actually out picking up things for the open house. By the time I got to Maple Terrace, the entire maintenance staff was there. There were multiple admin staff already there, helping the residents organize and working with the police department. So to Jim and his staff, we are extremely grateful because they were there 8 hours, making sure residents could get to the units, get back. They were already cleaning the hallways the day of the fire. So there was a real strong team effort, and everybody really did work hard to try and take care of the family. I mean, it wasn't, you're probably here Wednesday for people who weren't exactly happy. But I will say that overall, I think we did an excellent job of managing the fire.
We're proud of everybody, we are.
So Kim didn't make it. The Ross program, we are having as well, kind of talked about a couple times now, the health and benefit fair on the 31st here in the community. At this point, she has 23 organizations lined up to attend. They range from everybody from the VNA to the Social Security to there are elder day, mental health facilities, and we actually got a confirmation that we're waiting to see if it actually comes from Congressman Foster, or Senator coming from Congress. Congressman Foster has agreed to be in attendance. He will have a booth set up at the fair as well, so we're hoping that he actually can find the time. And obviously, being a confirmation of these guys, so hopefully he has the time to come check on us and see how we're doing. And hopefully, she's been working very hard to kind of get the word out. A lot of the other organizations we're working with and working hard to get the word out as well. So we're hoping for a very strong turnout. We expect this to be a very successful event. She added 4 new clients to the Ross program, so that brings the total to 22. So
That's so impressive.
I agree. It is a consistently growing program. It's one that we're starting to, I think people are starting to realize the benefits of having the program, having it up and running. So we hope that it continues to expand and continues to grow. And later on, of course, you'll see presentation from our attorneys on the open meetings and the freedom of information. It's going to be a 2-part. We don't want to take too much time tonight or on Wednesday, so you can have it today and have it Wednesday as well. Any questions? The fire department's report at this point now, I think our insurance actually is going to give us a more detailed report on this other part. The fire department's report gives us the location, which basically says it started near a television. Now, and that could be that there was actually electrical issues on our end, or it could be that the family had anything plugged into it. Until our insurance goes in and makes that determination, probably won't know for sure. What we have figured out is the area that happened around out. and that there was a TV in the center.
Next month, we'll be doing their inspections here, so we started our pre-inspection with the fire stuff, and change our focus and stuff. The house over at 1658C that caught on fire this month is completed.
Do you have to rerun that again then, or do the same people move back?
I would have to find, actually, the family had to move out, so they get the first right to come back. If they settle elsewhere, if they probably put them in a different unit, they may decide to stay there. If they decide to stay, then we'll just bring somebody else.
We had 12 furnaces and air conditioners and 7 water heaters, very scared sites. This is kind of Carlos's baby right here. All the furnaces and air conditioners and water heaters are money that we received from grant funding called CDAC, which but I'll find out. And also the labor costs, so it's virtually costless.
When I read that, I was absolutely shocked because you guys have been so lucky getting that, but there's never been installation included. It's come out of our office. Keep up your good work.
Handling, there's a man right there. American Demolition did start bringing their equipment in, and I noticed that they start doing some of the grading, seeding. The day after that big rain, that big huge rain, most of our focus was bailing out basements and stuff like that. Earlier that day, I got a call from a neighbor from one of our scared sites. He believed that water from one of our houses was causing flood damage to their basement. So I talked to him and stuff, and the guys went over there and addressed the issue. And a couple days later, she called back. She actually left a message. I was like, oh, geez. And she actually thanked us for those efficient timing in which we did and stuff. She was very appreciative. So, yeah, we always, when anything like that happens, I always try to get over it and just introduce myself and let you know if there's any incidents, please give me a call and my extension. We did have our open house Saturday 11th. It seemed like it's great success. Extremely pleased with the workmanship. Before I was here, I used to build houses and stuff like that. The workmanship of guys there was very comparable, better in some situations. Guys, we have a lot of talent. As you know, we did have that fire over at Maple Terrace, and like I said before, unfortunately, we get pretty good at it. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. Like Mr. Gregory said, staff just kind of knew what to do, phone calls and make the maintenance guys. They went up and had to escort a lot of residents up to the second floor to get a lot of their prescription personal belongings. There was still a lot of soot, there was still a lot of stuff. The guy was, and Mr. Gregory, he was there, he was working the crowd and stuff like that. He fit in so well as we're escorting the residents, we almost escorted him to the apartment. But that just goes to show that that nobody's above and beyond going and helping whatever it takes to help these residents. The residents were great too. They're very appreciative. They trust us. They believe in us. We accommodated as well as possible. For the most part, they were very grateful. We completed 6 vacant turnarounds, and we got a new hire a couple weeks ago doing this business center.
Any questions?
Jim, I think I've asked this before, I can't remember. As far as like the furnaces and things in the scattered site houses, who's responsible for like changing the furnace filters and things like that?
We usually do. I mean, we leave them there. We let the residents know that they can change it. But usually, like if we do our yearly thing in twice a year, we try to get out there right before, like around August, change all the filters, and check them out, and then through the course of, we'll go back out, anytime we have a work order or something, we usually just switch it out, and stuff like that. Some residents will change them out, and others don't, but we always leave 1 or 2 just in case.
Just want to kind of go back and apologize. Like Jim said, the open house was really nice. And Commissioner Cruz, I think we had an article in the papers. For once, I think it was an article that was all good news, so that was nice. The reporters will be back. We selected the family that's going to move in, so we did select them. We actually met with the family today, and the young lady was very excited to move in. So she's actually going for her walkthrough Thursday. So like I said, it was a really big. We had a decent turnout, I think, and I think it was a nice event. People got to see what we were capable of doing. What I've gotten actually, which goes very well with all of the fancy, great things I dreamed up in the strategic plan. It was very nice. I've had several people who currently are not receiving public assistance who have decent paying jobs ask when or if those units will be available to more than just public housing residents. So it says a lot about how far we can really take this, if we continue down this road. And also, I think, house on another topic, we discussed having a public housing program manager, and we've had that vacancy for a little while, so we have filled that position. And again, one of the things I think I mentioned when I interviewed, as well as kind of earlier on, I believe in promoting from within, having people from the inside move up. So I'm happy to say that Maria Martinez, who is a property manager at Eastwood, Indian Trail, and Southridge, all 3, will be, there's all 3 and the scattered sites for the east side of town. She will be our new public housing program manager and overseeing the program.
She'll do a very good job.
So she's very talented and understands the program well. She has excellent relationships with our tenants, which is one of the things that was very important to me, that she had a very strong tenant relationship. So her first day in should be June 1st. So go ahead and have her.
Congratulations.
Actually, I'll make sure she comes to the meeting. If there are no other questions.
I was just going to make a comment, talk about good publicity, and 31st event, we should twist some arms, make sure that
they already have. I've already talked to Stephanie. She's actually going to run probably, and I can talk to her actually later this week, so she can get in touch with Kim and Arthur. She'll be present as well. And I'm going to see her again on Thursday, so I'll have an opportunity to talk to her. We've also reached out, and Kim will be here on Wednesday again, a little bit more information about the report. We've also reached out to, I think there's another local newspaper, The Voice. All the other agencies are also promoting the individuals that are involved on their websites and through their flyers we've had with the Melody Club. This property, they're actually going to a lot of local churches and handing out flyers. So we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. But again, certainly we're going to try and I'm offering to take Stephanie to lunch, so we'll see if that works. But we're
Would that be called bribery?
maybe, or it could be called networking.
Okay.
It's the 31st.
It's our health and benefit.
Oh, there.
Kim put together.
Yeah. How is the turnout among like people that we invited from other agencies and stuff in town?
At the open house? See, we had a couple community church members came by. We had our full attorney staff. We had Commissioner Cruz. Obviously, we had the gentleman used to work with the city, Sherman Jenkins, came by from the city. Of course, Mr. Guzman, of course, was there. Representing the city. And then we had members actually of the neighborhood kind of showed up too. So I think we invited, not only we invited probably 50 or more people, not that we really expected 50 to show up. We probably got about 10 to 12 actual people off the list of people we invited to show
that article that was in the paper, I got one call that said, the positive article, that's a change in the right direction. But I told my pastor, I told him about something. I said, read the article. He said, is it good? Maybe. I said, no, just read it. So anyway, yeah, that was good.
It was a very, I like Stephanie, but I always wonder when she's a reporter, so there's a historian to make it worthwhile. So I was a little concerned after we did the whole interview. I was going over in my head everything that I said and that was twisted. But actually, you know, she gave it a very, I can't argue. It was a very nice article. It was really positive. So, and we hope to have more like that.
Yeah, moving right along. I guess it's easy.
Again, this resolution is only back on the agenda because we did not get the vote on it last. So unless there are any other questions, that'll be presented for vote on Wednesday. Section 3 policy. I know you all had it in your packets. We talked about it a little bit. Are there any questions regarding that?
I understand the goals in terms of getting job opportunities for, but some of the numbers say like 30% participation, stuff like that. Those numbers seem like super high.
The actual policy, and David can probably go into it a little bit more, the actual numbers from the policy tend to come from kind of put form of documentation. But David can go ahead.
Well, the 30% comes from HUD recommendation. And the only thing about this policy, it looks very nice, and we have some put money into the resident training and education fund for the housing authority. The fact is, it only deals with new hires. So most contractors we're using right now have been new hires. They're using their own people that they have, or they've had for a long time, or they can call them back. So I mean, the jobs usually, if we were lucky, would be maybe 2 or 3. It would be nice if we had been able to get the demolition grant in there. It would make a lot of dollars off of that, because it was a large expensive project. But it's not hard, and basically all you have to do is provide documentation what they're doing. So we're going to have probably very little initially. As we have more large contracts, we may have more to it. But as I say, it only addresses the new hires, and that the company, even the size of American Demolition, they had no new hires. A lot of people we use now have no new hires at all. Usually people they add or calling back. So they're not required to do anything except document that. And we're required by HUD to document the same thing. So when we get reports in, we keep reports. We get to report on once a year what we're doing, how we're doing it. Okay. So this gives us a little bit of teeth. Section 3 policy has always been in place. This gives us some area we can use it better. We have the opportunity for more money, and that's all gain for us.
Only one question I had, and I think it cleared up at the end of the policy. It said, the residents own a business owner, residents,
Section 3 business concern is if actually a resident has their own company,
yeah,
we could then request the general contractor to hire subcontractors, and that's a possibility. But again, there's different sets of things for different groups of people. And our residents that are living in the housing or development work being done is always the number 1 tier. Resident 3 business concern is any business in the area that meets a certain income levels.
okay,
So all is decided by how their income levels. That's what it's all based on.
okay.
I have just a small concern about the section 3 policy where it references residents of the Aurora Housing Authority, but it doesn't make much reference to the section 8%. I have a big concern about that because there is a population of section 8 recipients, and I'm not really complaining, but there is not enough interest in that program. It seems like to me, we have a Ross program that's catered towards, the residents of the housing authority, but what about the section 8? There are some people who are doing well under the section 8 program. And I don't know, what the process is for monitoring that, but, a lot of emphasis is placed on the residents. I don't have a problem with that either, just want to know is there anything that's going to be implemented for those residents?
Absolutely. I completely understand the concern, and one of the, I guess, not say problems, but kind of the construction of it is HUD looks at public housing section as 2 completely different entities, almost like we have 2 companies running within the side of the housing authority. So when we do implement something for public housing, it is separate by nature from section 8 just because of the programs. Not to say that we want to exclude section 8 residents. Obviously, there is certainly a need for all of our residents to be involved in our program. And strategic plan doesn't draw as much of a line. This Section 3 policy, I don't know that we can apply it to our Section 8 residents, just simply because of how HUD defines the guidance. There are programs similar to the Ross program for Section 8. The FSS, which is Family Self-Sufficiency Program, is a mirror image program strictly for Section 8. At one point in time, we had an FSS program. Apparently, either we weren't able to earn the interest or maintain the interest. And there, we don't have any funding. We don't get a grant for that right now. If, and as Kim goes through the steps of reaching a final money, she'll certainly reach out to try and see if there's still funding available and what kind of funding we can get for an FSS program for Section 8. It's just, it's, I'm not going to say it's a fair problem, because it's certainly not. It's just, in the areas where we can do quicker right now, we've just been able to do certain things more on the public housing side than we have in Section 8. But we certainly will try.
Keith, can I add one thing? As I said, first tier is residents at the site where it's being done. Second tier would be Aurora Housing Authority residents at other sites, or Section 3 program, or the income guidelines for everybody who lives in the city of Aurora and Kane County. So in other words, the top tier would be the first people. If we don't have that group to pull from, then we go down the list, who's next, who's next. So we'll definitely give opportunities to people. And what we could do is, if we have a large contract, before we have the actual contract, let people know that these jobs may be available, or these, as Mr. Jeffrey said, the business street concerns, we may give them an opportunity to bid on things. So we're trying to incorporate everybody in the city of Aurora, which is a large city, in Kane County, to provide opportunities as they come up. And again, though, it's up to the contractors to employ someone. So they can go through 5 or 6 people and hire who they want to hire. So if you have more skill levels, you have a better chance.
And I was just asking because, the loss of the Jericho Circle Center, the families that were relocated. Who's monitoring that as far as keeping people informed and allowing them the same or similar opportunities. Some people are continuing their education and have landed good paying jobs, and would they qualify for any of the incentives that are being offered as far as scattered sites of being able to upgrade.
Absolutely. And as we continue down the road, and I know that actually I haven't talked to one, so I will make sure that we're at least, I know one of our Section 8 caseworkers has a very specific caseload that relates to a lot of the residents from Jericho Circle. So maybe we will go about having her to start kind of doing just kind of an email or a phone call update to people, let them know these are the things the housing authority is currently doing. These are certain things that you may qualify for, may be interested in. And again, we'll continue to try and find funding opportunities that will help us to provide opportunities for those residents as well.
Does this policy, Section 3, does that go for anything that we pay people to do, like landscaping services and things like that, or is it specifically for like construction?
It's tailored for construction simply because there are more opportunities for jobs in that situation. It's just a lot easier for construction firms sometimes to hire people to do some of the on the lower end, less requiring tasks that might occur on a construction site. Whereas, for example, a lawyer, it's more difficult for them to hire somebody to do attorney work. So while it is tailored more towards construction, just because there are more dollars typically and there's more work to be done, it can apply kind of universally. I think there's a threshold in the contract too.
There's different dollar thresholds, and it's by percentage. The smaller the contract, the greater percentage. I think we may actually at some point in time decide that maybe like a line with $50,000 might be good, because people above that money are making more profit. We talk about the landscape service, for example. They are usually people they've always had worked for them. If they hire somebody new, it could be one of the residents who offer that. And we're hoping to go to the Ross program. They have residents that have been trained through that, be able to have skill levels up to have a ready pool, so to speak. And one of the things we're trying to incorporate into is us creating a ready pool of residents we have available, or residents in the Ross program, or even Section 8 residents. If they're here, we do plan doing probably mailings, asking if any interest what we want to do. The problem is this is a big program, sounds real nice in big letters. The actuality, though, is you're going to get 1 or 2 people out of $1 million contract. They have to start hiring new people.
Yeah, I guess my point being that we spend a lot of money on a lot of different things, we give out a lot of contracts to people. And, you know, why not ask them to, you know, especially if we have a pool, almost like a temp service type of pool, if it's, you know, starting with the Ross people or, you know, whatever, you know, we're giving you $15,000 worth of landscaping business. Why don't you hire one of our residents part-time through the summer, you know, or something like that? It seems like we can start asking, you know, people to do that.
That's certainly, you know, and I certainly, but I think, you know, as we go, especially as we go into strategic planning, we are planning to spend, you know, over 5 years, $60 million in operations. So as we have contracts that come up, I think certainly it's reasonable for us to lean on people bidding, put into the bid. Do you have a plan? And make it part of the scoring. If you're going to get a contract from us, what is your plan to hire our residents? You can get an extra 5 points in your scoring if you put together a strong plan of intent to make sure that the people who are bidding on our contracts are considering that even before they go into doing the work. Any other questions on the section? We are going to add one resolution, and I apologize. It's on the TV. We'll get an email out to everybody. It's already on the agenda, so we will be able to vote on it on Wednesday. We had a discussion last month with the Maple Terrace Resident Council, and Kim was very, very skilled in calming that situation down. So as a result, we actually had a resident council, and believe it or not, everybody came out happy behind this. What we're going to do is create a separate council, so to speak, not really a council as much as it's a committee for volunteerism. Kim actually came up with the bright idea that a lot of our residents are required to do 8 hours of community service every month. And they typically do that community service someplace else. They do it at churches, they do it at different volunteer organizations. Instead, we will encourage those families, those individuals to do their community service at the site which they live in, doing community gardening, doing beautification, clean up of the hallways, different kinds of just volunteer work that they can do on or in the property they live in. So the ladies who wanted to be on the resident council who determined really probably had lost that opportunity due to the bylaws of the lieutenant council, they're going to be kind of the committee for the volunteerism group over at Maple Terrace, and we will have an actual resident council. So as a result of that, we have a resolution to come before the board on Wednesday. They have put together, you know, they have the bylaws, they are organized, all the documentation's in place. So we made a promise that we put the resolution before the board, and we shall on Wednesday.
Sounds like Kim's been working overtime.
Kim has been working very hard. So, but I you know, give her all the credit. She went down to the site every day, 2 times a day, sometimes with everybody, and she came with this idea on her own and really presented this really good solution. And it comes out, everybody came out a winner. People still get to be involved in their communities in various ways. So, and it helps housing authority because now we're getting that volunteer work that was leaving the agency is now staying with us. Any questions on the new resolution? All right. We are going to have a very brief presentation from our attorneys. This is a sort of a requirement for the boards, so that you guys can say that you're up to date on the law, on the federal or state Open Meetings Act. And again, the other half of the presentation will be on Wednesday, and it will be on the federal Freedom of Information Act. So I will over to Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. And as Keith mentioned, we had spoken earlier, we weren't clear as to how much exposure everybody had on the board to both the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. They apply to the board. So we thought it was good to give you a brief overview of some things. I do want to emphasize that we were requested to keep it brief, and we want to do that anyway. So it is an overview. It's not an in-depth description of every requirement in the Act. The idea being to get you acquainted to the basics, get you acquainted with some of the requirements that you have to do specifically, and to alert you to areas where the questions come up, then we can be alerted and we can get the response to you. As Keith mentioned, we're going to do the Open Meetings Act today, and we'll do the Freedom of Information Act on Wednesday. Where it has to point to get to.
I just want to
So as I mentioned, what we'll cover are just basic rules, and that's who's covered by the act, what's a meeting, what's that, how's that described in the statute, what's it take to get a meeting properly convened. There are, as you know, the general rule in Illinois is that all meetings are open to the public, and your votes are made in public at a public meeting, but there are some exceptions. So we'll just kind of briefly describe for you what those exceptions are. There is training required, and we'll cover that for you real briefly. And then oftentimes we were asked, well, how's the act enforced? And so we'll cover that real briefly. The act says that all elected and appointed members of a public body are covered by the act, and all designated employees, so that all of you as members of the board are covered. Also, certain employees of the housing authority can be designated to be covered, and that means that they're also going to have to be required to take the training. Typically, we would suggest that an employee who is required to schedule your meetings, being responsible for posting the notices, being responsible for putting the agenda together, that they be a designated employee as well. Then by law, of course, the housing authority is a public body, so as a body it's covered by the Open Meetings Act, and the statute then requires that the names of all of the elected or appointed officials, meaning all of the board members, and any of the employees who are designated, the list has to be sent down to what's called the PAC, the Public Access Counselor at the Attorney General's office, and those people who are on that list are required to complete the training. Oop, go back one. A meeting under the statute is listed as a gathering, and a gathering can be physical or by electronic means, and it's a gathering of a majority of a quorum. Since your board is 7, quorum is 4, and a majority of 4 is 3. So if there are any 3 members of the board together at one time, it raises at least the inquiry as to whether a meeting is taking place. However, for a meeting to be covered by the Open Meetings Act, it has to be a gathering where those 3 people are present or able to communicate with each other and discuss public business. If that occurs, then it has to be a noticed public meeting with the ability of the public to attend as any other meeting, just like this one. So, for example, if you have the board together for a social event discussing the Cubs, it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. At the same time, you have to be very careful if everyone's together, even at a social function, because somebody is going to think that you may be discussing public business. So you have to be careful that if you're all together at a time and place where it's not a posted public meeting, that the discussion does not cover any public business. Meetings can also, by statute, be electronic. So email, messaging, chat rooms, those kinds of things can become a meeting, so you have to be careful about that, particularly with email. And so we, for example, staff are not covered by the Open Meetings Act. They can exchange emails, and they can send emails to the board with information, and that's perfectly okay. Where you run into a problem is if the board then starts replying or responding to each other, hitting that reply to all button, for example, now it becomes a discussion, even though it's electronic, and potentially can be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So what we usually say is, there's the one-shot rule. Somebody, even a board member, can send information to the other board members, but that's it. It can't be replies. You can't have that interchange or discussion to occur. In order to have a public meeting, you have two requirements. One are your regular meetings for the year, and at the beginning of the year, you're required by statute to create that schedule of your regular meetings, which you have, and it gets posted. And it gets posted on your website. And then for all meetings, you have to post your agenda at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. 1, at the principal office of the public body. 2, if your meeting is at a different location, at that location. And 3, if you maintain a website, it gets posted on the website. If you have to call a special meeting, that also requires 48 hours notice, along with notice to the media, unless it's an emergency. If it's an emergency meeting, you have to give as much notice as possible. It's important when we talk about even a properly called meeting that you understand you cannot take action on items that are not listed on the agenda for action. So that you can discuss an item that's not on your agenda, but you can't vote on it. And to be on the agenda and subject to a vote, it has to show to the public or someone reading that agenda that it's a matter that you're expected to take action on. So oftentimes you will see 2 different things on an agenda. One might say discussion, and if it says we're going to discuss a certain resolution, and that's all it says, the Attorney General and the State's Attorney both issued opinions that even though that's on your agenda, you only imparted to the public that you were going to discuss it, you can't vote on it. Some agendas will say action items and list them, others will just have an item and it may say approval of resolution 13-5. Well, that means, that tells the person that it's going to be subject to approval or subject to a vote. The other thing, and an amendment that was just made this last year, is you have to have a sufficient description of the item on your agenda so that the public knows the basic subject matter. So if you just say approval of resolution 13-5, and that's all it says on the agenda, that's probably insufficient under the statute. It should say approval of resolution 13-5 to establish your strategic plan for you, or something like that. It has to give some indication of what the action is that you're going to take. As I mentioned, there are exceptions, and those are the ones where you can go into closed or executive session. In order to have an executive session, you first have to have a properly called public meeting. And so you would convene the meeting as you did today, have your roll call vote, establish a quorum, and then if you wanted to go into executive session, well, the statute doesn't say you have to have the statutory reference. The Attorney General has, in their opinion, has said that you do have to recite the specific statutory reference for that exception. For example, 5 ILCS 120/2C1 is an exception that I'll show you in a minute. We also recommend that you use the common phrase that's going to be the subject of the executive session. For example, the appointment of an employee to discuss pending litigation or threatened litigation, whatever the exception might be, so that the motion might say, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1 to discuss the appointment of an employee. That would be sufficient to go into executive session. You then have to have a roll call vote, and once you get into executive session, the statute requires that you not only have your written minutes as you would of your regular open meeting, but the statute also requires that to be tape recorded. For that recording, when you go into executive session, you should establish at the beginning of the tape again why you're there, so that the exception is noted. The tape recording of an executive session is available only under 2 very limited circumstances. One, a court, if you're in a court proceeding, a court can listen to it to determine whether or not there's been a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Or 2, in certain circumstances, the public access counselor can require it to be produced to the Attorney General's office, and they can listen to it for that same reason.
So when we videotape these, if we were going to go into an executive session on Wednesday, the videotape stopped, or how's that work?
We would set the videotape. Alex keeps we used to have a digital recorder. We used to set the tape, and that's how we've always done it. So we just continue that process.
And because you're on your public meetings, while it's great to have that videotape, you're not required to do that. There are 29 exceptions for going into a closed meeting, and I'm not going to cover all those. Most of them wouldn't apply anyway, but some might. But the ones that I mentioned, and the numbers are that subsection that I mentioned, so when we say 120/2C1, that's for personnel to discuss the hiring, termination, or discipline of an employee. /2 are labor negotiations. /5 and 6 involve the acquisition of real estate. 11 is to discuss litigation, but those are very common ones that you might see. I mentioned that there is required Open Meetings Act training. All members of the public body and any designated employees are required to take the training, which is online at that website. If you go on, oops, I gotta go back to Stan. If you go on and to that site, it allows you to register. It gives you the electronic training. I can tell you it doesn't take very long at all. It's relatively short. And you actually then answer some questions. And if you answer one wrong, it sends you back to the discussion. Then you come back and answer the question right. And once you've done them all, it allows you to print the certificate that you completed the training. Currently, as we always, pardon?
So you can't fail us.
You can't fail it. We do get asked though, if oh gosh, I didn't get it done in a timely manner, what's the penalty? Right now, the statute doesn't have a penalty. Typically, any new board member has to do it within 30 days. Every board member has to, at the beginning of a new term, take it again. So if you are on the board, you've done the training, you've got your certificate, your term comes up, you come back on the board again for another term, you have to do it again. But every member of the board and those designated employees all need to do that and be the same people who are on the list that you send down to the Attorney General's office.
Yeah, well, I'll email everybody.
Right. As we mentioned, for an Open Meetings Act violation, generally only the members of the board can actually violate the act. Staff members don't. They're not covered. They don't have to have an open meeting when they get together. Any person in the public can file a complaint with the Public Access Counselor at the Attorney General's office. The Public Access Counselor reviews any records, can review recordings of executive sessions, and ultimately they can issue a final decision. Their decision, if you disagree with it, or if the party making the complaint disagrees with it, can take it to court under the Administrative Review Act, where the court would then review the decision of the Public Access Counselor. Go ahead, pick one more. In addition, any person can make a complaint. Oops, that's all right. They can make a complaint on their own and go directly and file a lawsuit if they want to do the Open Meetings Act. So that's a very brief review of it for you. Happy to answer any questions.
So 3 people getting together is a violation, but if it's myself and Bill and Keith being a staff member, is that okay?
That's okay. But if it's 3 of you and you're going to discuss public business, then it needs
We can get together, we just can't discuss what.
Oh, okay, so we can't get together and discuss, so
2 of you and Keith can get together and discuss business without having to post it as a public meeting.
but we
You get it, no, we can't.
Right, I get it, I just wanted to make sure I understood the staff part in the last slide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Redevelopment of food.
We have no redevelopment activity at all.
Then we need to go to close the executive session.
We usually do that on Wednesday, don't we?
I don't know, it's on the agenda.
Yeah, you can do it today.
Doing a good job.
Well, any other questions come before the board? Concerns?
Has
Hearing none?
anybody signed up on those papers?
We don't do public comment.
That's
Oh,
not
okay.
Wednesday. That's not Wednesday.
I'm sure we'll have some.
Not on your agenda, okay, you're in good shape.
We will, this is a note from lesson learned from the last meeting. Mr. Wilson did point out, we will do as the city does and limit the comments to 3 minutes.
3 minutes, that's,
I know that we'll post them on the door and on the sign-in sheet as well, and we'll remind people.
that was not bad. I have a couple of things, maybe one. You sent out something about a complaint against the AHA.
Yes.
Do you wanna kind of go over that pretty?
Certainly. Now, it is a matter of litigation, and one of the ones to executive session.
Yeah,
And-
we have to go into executive session to do that.
Okay, let's go ahead, that's,
I need you to do a motion, so go into executive session.
may I have a motion?
So
Discuss.
moved.
I'd like to make a motion, we go into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
Very good.
Roll call?
My second, that.
And
I thought we-
Henry Chapin,
Yes.
Bill Powell,
Yes.
Matty Koval,
Yes.
That you're not happy about it, can you note that on there?
Yeah, please note that.
Judy Rungy. Yes. Dave Richard,
Yes.
Scott Boris.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a short break, let it room.